Freedom's Cause, Vignette 5, titled Communism. There is a type of person that is little talked about, yet they are perhaps the most dangerous individuals the world has or will ever know. It is those who covet, for their unwavering desire is to obtain the fullness of the luxuries of life as quickly as possible by whatsoever means are necessary, so thereby they might enjoy a life of luxury. Such individuals do not sustain those principles held within America's Declaration of Independence, for they have no desire to develop over a timely period their skills and talents, acquire over a timely period wealth and property. Of greater consequence for the virtuous is the most determined and hard-hearted of those who covet transfer their fidelity from said declaration to a willingness to champion extremist political doctrines. Do so, as in such they see the means by which they can quickly obtain all they covet. For the doctrine of those who covet, and the doctrine of such movements, such as Communism, is one and the same, that the Communist Party has the right to obtain all it desires as quickly as possible by whatsoever means are necessary. Thus, via means of their covetous nature, the lie endows them with both the capacity to perceive it in its diverse guises and to obtain positions of authority within said movements. For as all communist governments function under the heading of the one-party system, this means the authority of the state functions via a closed loop which renders the voice of the people virtually mute. What those who abide within democracies fail to realize is any system of government that renders the voice of the people mute always allows for corruption to function within the halls of government by means of nepotism. It is by this means that covetous individuals rose to positions of power and gained control of the Soviet Union, did so by functioning as loyal sycophants, for as such they could enter into and become an active member of that secret society which had unseen tentacles of nepotism functioning within that nation, acquiring membership therein as their harsh, unyielding, demanding rhetoric within the party in regards to what immediate and whatsoever means necessary meant, marked them to those with eyes to see and ears to hear as a fellow covetous person. Therefore, as a candidate for membership amongst those who hold no qualms over obtaining wealth and power quickly via whatsoever means are necessary. Also, to this day, those who live within democracies fail to recognize that within a totalitarian state, such as the Soviet Union, the power of the vote still dominated. For the vote of the elite within the Communist Party decided who would lead the party and thus the nation. The numerical power block of the vote of those who belonged to this secret society held the unseen capacity to make its leader the head of the party and therefore the nation, allowing them to remove any they considered a threat to their hold over the party and the secret society they adhere unto, specifically those who were true communists and hoped to see the lives of the nation's citizenry advance in a timely manner via a step-by-step process. It is evident there are marked differences between slavery and communism, the most obvious being, under communism, you didn't enslave merely a select group of people. You enslaved virtually the whole of a nation's citizenry. For when the state called, you came and accepted the work assigned, did it where you were told, with the requisite effort and by showing forth the appropriate communist zeal. For you knew, if as a worker you didn't consistently show the proper communist zeal, you could be labeled a malcontent, be arrested and put into a retraining program, meaning even if you were eventually allowed back into society, you'd be under constant surveillance, causing your fellow citizens to avoid having any undue contact with you. For what people really feared is not that via you they might also be labeled a malcontent, someone who complains about how they are treated as a worker. What they really feared is via you they might be labeled a subversive, someone who complains about the lack of goods and services the state provides to its citizens and the poor quality of same, who is saying communism doesn't work, as no matter how much time and effort workers put in, the stores are not only largely devoid of luxury goods, citizens have to wait in line for hours just to obtain the basics of life. For if you are labeled a subversive, you will not be subject merely to a retraining program. Instead, you'll be removed from society and punished, commonly via being worked to death. Further, under the laws of ancient slavery, slaves were denied their inalienable right to life, to develop their skills and talents. But under communism, workers were encouraged to develop highly technical skills and talents, for it was via their so doing that the Soviet Union became a military superpower. Yet, as noted, obtaining this right was reduced to an illusion, as workers in their standing as citizens were denied access to liberty, the capacity to acquire wealth and property. What this signified is that under ancient slavery, those who ruled controlled slaves via means of denying them access to life. But under communism, those who ruled had to control the general populace via means of their seemingly having access to life, while denying them access to liberty. Thus, the challenges associated with ruling over people via means of the laws of slavery had been compounded. For you had to control people in their standing as workers, so seemingly of their own free will they had developed the skills and talents required via the state. By this means you looked to prevent them from becoming malcontents. Then you had to control them in their standing as citizens by drawing from them ongoing, unwavering support for the Communist Party, and thereby prevent them from taking on the attitude of a subversive. To accomplish these two interdependent goals meant the Communist Party had to be divided into two political zones of responsibility, which meant each zone came to be dominated by its own nepotism-based secret society, both of which came into being via means of wife swapping. However, the establishment of these two societies created more problems than it resolved, for while via them covetous sycophants ruled over people in their standing as workers by the hand of oppression, ruled over them in their standings as citizens via laws of tyranny, the two groups were at odds with one another over which would head the party and thereby the nation. For due to their covetous nature, the members within each society could never trust their rival members. This meant the covetous nature of those who composed these two competitive societies would keep the general leadership of the party in a constant state of turmoil. Thus, for communism to survive, the lie had to establish the means via which these two competing groups would be forced to work together. This transpired via the lie establishing a third secret society, one which drew its membership from the other two and was therefore unknown to the vast majority of members within the other two. For where the first two were founded solely upon wife swapping, this society was based upon bisexual relationships. These are they who become aware of one another and thereby could be bound together by means of hardening their hearts to an even greater degree. For via so doing they could access an even greater depth of guile and thereby manipulate the vote within the party, allowing them to draw support from the two opposing groups and thereby place their chosen leader in power. He would then take on the appearance of being non-partisan by placing members from the two opposing groups into positions of authority within the party and state. But unbeknownst to those within these two opposing groups, the seemingly non-partisan leadership that was being established came from those who function via bisexual relationships. By this means, they became the masters, while those who functioned solely via means of wife swapping found they were reduced in standing to taskmasters, to duties they had to fulfill, else lose whatsoever financial benefits they might hope to obtain. For though they hardened their hearts, as they lacked the panache to function by means of bisexual relationships, it wasn't to the fullness thereof required via the lie for communism to function. In this it is for you to recognize the capacity for a person to function via guile increases according to the depth to which they harden their heart. Thus, the form of guile those who partake in bisexual relationships are capable of surpasses in subtlety that via which those who function solely via wife swapping are capable of. For while the former can discern and manipulate the thought process of the latter are unable to discern and thereby protect themselves from being manipulated by the former. For the former are aware of the latter, but the latter remain unaware of the former. Thus, without understanding what is transpiring, nor how it is brought to pass, the latter found they were excluded from the social ranks of those who were the true masters of the communist state. For the capacity the former have to harden their heart is not merely to do so in regards to discrete sexual relationships they carry out via wife swapping, so that via said means they might maintain the proper appearance before the general populace. Their capacity to harden their heart is to carry out discrete bisexual relationships that their spouse is unaware of, so thereby they might maintain the proper appearance before those who only function via means of wife swapping. Thus, in like manner as those who function via wife swapping, such individuals harden their hearts twice over, so thereby they could rule over their fellow citizens via laws of oppression and tyranny, but via virtue of their bisexual relationships, they have the capacity to harden their hearts even further, a third time, and to a greater degree, so thereby they can subject those who function via wife swapping to laws of oppression, a fourth time, and to an even greater degree when it came to subjecting these individuals to laws of tyranny. For only by hardening their hearts to this far greater depth could they rule over the nation's citizenry by the authority of the state and their political opponents by the authority of the party, doing both via a venue of laws that surpass in cruelty those who function solely via wife swapping are capable of conceiving and installing. For this reason, despite the manifest brutality of ancient slavery, slavery under the doctrine of communism was far more subtle and also far more brutal in nature. Being more subtle, as under communism, class distinction had seemingly disappeared, having been replaced by the worker state, wherein all loyal citizens function together as comrades. For where ancient slavery functioned by means of that subtlety required to beguile people, so thereby you could corrupt the authority of their culture, and thus bring those you termed as lesser people into bondage. Communism functions by means of that subtlety required to beguile, so thereby you can corrupt the authority of the state and place a nation's people under bondage. It is this greater depth of corruption that endows such individuals with the capacity to feel they are in fact the elect of the communist state, and are therefore justified in believing they have the right and responsibility to rule via laws of tyranny and oppression. As void of their harsh leadership, the two opposing components within the party would rip each other apart, and in so doing destroy the party's ability to rule. For these reasons, bisexual relationships cannot be licensed under America's Declaration of Independence, as those who function via them acquire the innate capacity to harden their hearts to that depth whereby they can authorize those laws of tyranny and oppression associated with communism and feel no qualms in so doing.